The galaxy was not a peaceful place. Stars burned bright, planets circled them, and life tried to survive in every corner of space. But survival was never easy. There were empires that ruled with iron fists, pirates that roamed the empty void, and endless dangers hidden in the dark. Yet above them all there was one terror that made every species whisper in fear. They were called the Hunters. The Hunters did not build civilizations. They did not trade, negotiate, or create peace. They lived only to hunt. Their fleets moved like shadows across the stars, arriving without warning, striking without mercy. When they came, entire worlds fell silent. Cities were destroyed, ships were torn apart, and people vanished, never to be seen again. Species across the galaxy told stories of them. Some said the Hunters were demons born from dying stars. Others believed they were machines created in a forgotten war. But the truth was simpler. They were predators, cold, clever, and ruthless. And in their eyes, every living race was nothing more than prey. For centuries, the Hunters had conquered without resistance. The reptilian Harkesh were wiped from history. The winged Ceralians fell screaming from their burning skies. Even the mighty Zoran Empire, which had ruled for 1,000 years, crumbled in just one Hunter campaign. No one had ever defeated them. No one had even slowed them down. The Hunters had grown arrogant. They believed the galaxy was theirs to consume, piece by piece. And in their endless hunger they searched for new prey. That search would lead them to a small blue planet orbiting an average yellow star. A world called Earth. At first, the Hunters did not think much of it. Humans, they thought, were weak. They were soft and fragile compared to the armored hides of the Zoran or the fire wings of the Ceralians. Their weapons seemed primitive. Their ships were young and untested. To the Hunters, it looked like the easiest hunt they had ever taken. But humans were not like the others. The first contact was silent. One Hunter scout ship entered the Sol system, its black hull blending with the void. It observed Earth from orbit, scanning its defenses, listening to its signals, and marking it for slaughter. The scout reported back with a simple message: easy. Prey. The Hunters prepared their fleets. Thousands of ships formed up in the darkness of deep space. Their engines burned purple fire as they moved toward their next feast. Commanders gave orders. Weapons were sharpened. The hunt would begin soon. But even before the first strike, strange reports reached the Hunters. The humans had noticed them. Somehow the species they thought was blind had seen through their stealth. A listening station on the edge of the system had detected their movement. A patrol ship had tracked their strange purple engines. And instead of panicking, instead of running, the humans did something no one else had ever done. They prepared to fight. This confused the Hunters. Every other race had begged for mercy, had tried to surrender, had offered tribute. The humans did not. They armed their fleets. They built defenses on their colonies. They sent messages not of fear, but of defiance. The Hunters found this amusing. To them, it was like a small animal baring its teeth before the lion. Brave, but useless. Still, the Hunters were cautious. They decided to test this new prey. A small fleet of warships was sent ahead, tasked with striking a human colony on the outer rim. It was supposed to be quick and easy, a clean demonstration of Hunter power. But the humans had been watching. When the Hunters arrived, they expected silence and panic. Instead, they found mines hidden in the asteroid fields. They found patrol, ships already waiting, and when they attacked, they were met with a storm of fire. Railguns thundered, missiles screamed across the void, and plasma cannons lit up the black sky. For the first time in countless hunts, the Hunters lost ships. It was not a total victory for humanity. Many human ships were destroyed. Entire crews gave their lives to slow the Hunters. But the fact that they had resisted at all was something terrifying. The Hunter commander reported back to his superiors. His message was short but shaken. This prey fights. Across Earth and its colonies. Humans braced themselves. They knew the Hunters would come in greater numbers. They knew the war was only beginning. But they also knew something the Hunters did. Not humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. They had fought each other for thousands of years, and through that struggle, they had learned to endure. In the silence of space, a new story was about to begin. The hunters believed they had found their next feast. But the galaxy was about to learn a terrible truth. Humans were not prey. They were predators. And the hunt was about to turn against the hunters. The first battle was small, but it was enough to change everything. For the first time in their long history, the hunters had been wounded. Their fleet had lost ships to a species they thought would collapse at the first strike. It was unthinkable. To the hunters, every prey was supposed to break, to scream, and to die quickly. But humans had not broken. They had fought with fury, and even in defeat they had drawn blood. The hunter leaders were not pleased. To them, pride was everything. Losing ships to a young species was an insult they could not accept. In their cold, calculating way, they decided to make an example. A larger fleet was ordered to strike deeper into human territory. Not just a colony this time, something greater. They wanted to burn a human world so badly that all others would kneel in fear. Across Earth's colonies, alarms rang. Humanity knew they had only weeks, maybe days, before the next attack. On every station and every shipyard, people worked day and night. Soldiers trained, engineers reinforced defenses, scientists reprogrammed old weapons to fight in space. Every person understood the truth. This was not just another war. This was survival. And yet, even in this moment of fear, humans did not despair. Instead, something ancient woke inside them, the fire of resistance, the will to fight back. They had been underestimated before by nature itself, by stronger enemies, and by impossible odds. Every time humanity had found a way to endure, and now they would endure again. The hunters arrived in force. Their fleet was massive, a storm of black warships stretching across the void. Their engines glowed like purple suns, their weapons pulsed with energy. Entire squadrons of hunter craft swarmed forward, ready to erase another species from existence. Their target was a colony world called Helios 3, a planet rich with cities and oceans. The hunters wanted to crush it quickly and completely. They did not expect a fight, but what they saw waiting in orbit was something they had never encountered before. The humans had built a trap. Helios-3's orbit was filled with defense platforms, heavy with cannons and missile silos. Civilian ships had been stripped down and refitted with weapons. Fighters hidden in the shadow of moons powered up their engines. The humans had not run. They had not hidden. They had prepared an ambush. When the hunter fleet entered the system, the trap was sprung. The first shots came from the asteroid belt, railguns hidden deep inside mined-out rocks. Slugs of superheated metal tore through hunter escorts before they even knew they were under fire. Missiles launched from hidden silos streaked across space, slamming into enemy cruisers. And from behind the shadow of the planet, the human fleet emerged. The void lit up with war. The hunters responded with their usual brutality. Their ships unleashed waves of energy fire, cutting through human vessels with terrifying precision. Colonies on the surface below shook as orbital bombardments rained down. Whole cities were set ablaze. Thousands of lives were lost in moments. But the humans did not retreat. They fought back with everything they had. For every human ship destroyed, a hunter warship fell with it. Fighters dived straight into enemy formations, sacrificing themselves to take down larger ships. Troop carriers were rammed head-on into hunter destroyers, exploding in brilliant bursts of fire. Even civilian crews, who had never seen battle, fought as if survival depended on their courage, and it did. The battle raged for hours. Space became a graveyard of shattered hulls and burning wreckage. Yet through the chaos, one truth became clear. The hunters were not invincible. A single moment changed the course of the fight. A human battleship, the Iron Resolve, charged directly at the hunter flagship. Its engines burned red as it pushed past wave after wave of enemy fire. Its armor cracked, its shields collapsed, but it kept going. With its last breath, it unleashed every weapon it carried. Missiles, cannons, and railguns thundered in unison, tearing into the Hunter command ship. The flagship exploded in a chain of fire that lit the system brighter than the sun. The humans cheered, even as their own ship broke apart in the blast. They had done the impossible. They had killed the leader of the hunt. The surviving hunters were shaken. For the first time, they hesitated. Their perfect formations wavered. They retreated, dragging their broken ships out of the system. Helios 3 had survived, scarred, bloodied, but still standing. Across the galaxy, the news spread faster than light. The impossible had happened. A prey species had fought the hunters and lived. The enslaved races whispered in the shadows. Could it be true? Could the monsters who had destroyed empires finally be defeated? And deep inside their hidden empire, the hunters gathered in fury. Humanity had humiliated them. Humanity had broken the one rule of the galaxy: prey do not fight back. Now, the hunters swore they would destroy the humans completely. They would not stop until Earth itself burned. But humanity was ready. The first fire had been lit, and it would only grow. The hunters of the galaxy had finally met something far more dangerous. A species that did not fear death. A species that would never stop fighting. A species called humanity. The galaxy had been watching. Species that once cowered in silence now listened with disbelief. The impossible had happened. Not once, but twice. First, humans had resisted. Then they had destroyed a hunter flagship. It was more than a victory. It was a crack in the myth of invincibility. For the first time in centuries, the hunters were not feared as gods. They were seen as something else, something that could bleed. But the hunters were not finished. Humiliated and enraged, they sent more fleets. They came in, greater numbers, swarming like a tide of black warships. They believed their sheer power would erase the shame of Helios 3. They expected the humans to crumble under the weight of endless fire. Yet humanity had learned something in those first battles. They had seen how the hunters fought. They had studied their patterns, their weaknesses, their overconfidence. Where others saw terror, humans saw opportunity, and they adapted faster than the hunters could imagine. Instead of meeting the enemy head-on, humans began to fight differently. They became unpredictable. They became hunters themselves. Small strike groups vanished into asteroid belts, waiting, like wolves in the dark. When hunter convoys passed, the humans would strike with sudden fury, then disappear again. Hidden bases and moons and gas giants launched surprise attacks on supply lines. Whole fleets moved silently through warp corridors, striking deep inside enemy space before vanishing like ghosts. The hunters were confused. This was not how prey was supposed to behave. Prey was supposed to run, to scream, to die. But humans stalked their predators. Each battle told a new story. A single human destroyer lured a hunter squadron into the orbit of a dying star, then triggered a solar flare that consumed them all. A team of human marines boarded a hunter cruiser, fought deck by deck, and captured it intact. That cruiser was turned against its former masters in the very next battle. The galaxy watched in awe as humans mastered the game of war. They did not match the hunters in numbers, nor in raw power, but they had something else, something the hunters could never understand: creativity, strategy, the will to adapt. And humanity's greatest weapon was unity. On Earth and its colonies, people who once fought over borders and politics now stood together. Old grudges were forgotten. Nations pooled their resources. Engineers, scientists, and soldiers worked side by side. Every human became part of the war effort. Factories thundered with new weapons. Shipyards launched vessels day and night. Children grew up with one message whispered in their ears: we fight, or we die. The hunters did not understand this. To them, prey was always divided. Prey always broke apart when pushed. But humanity grew stronger with every strike, more united. With every loss. The whispers across the galaxy grew louder. Enslaved species watched the rise of humanity with desperate hope. Some even began to resist in small ways, sabotaging hunter supply depots, passing intelligence to human fleets, daring to imagine freedom. The hunters noticed. They knew this was dangerous. If one species could resist, others might follow. They had to crush humanity completely, or risk losing their grip on the galaxy. So they sent their warlords. These were not just ordinary fleets. They were the elite, the veterans of 1,000 hunts. Their ships were larger, their weapons sharper, their tactics ruthless. They descended on a cluster of human colonies expecting to erase them in fire. But humanity had been waiting. The humans had laid another trap, bigger, bolder, and deadlier than before. When the hunter warlords arrived, they found the colonies strangely undefended. Only a few ships floated in orbit, their signals faint and weak. Believing it was easy prey, the warlords charged. That was when the trap closed. From the darkness of space, entire human fleets emerged. Carriers unleashed waves of fighters. Battleships opened fire from hidden positions. Mines scattered across the system exploded in brilliant bursts. The hunters were caught in a killing ground, surrounded on all sides. The battle was chaos. Human ships darted in and out, striking hard, then vanishing. Coordinated fleets cut through hunter formations like knives. The warlords fought with all their power, but they were outmatched not in strength, but in cunning. Humanity had rewritten the rules of war. When the smoke cleared, the once proud warlord fleets were gone, shattered wrecks drifting through space. Humanity had not only survived, they had won, and they had done it their way. Across the stars, the message was clear. The hunters were no longer the only predators. Humanity had learned the game, and they were playing to win. The hunters, once feared by all, were beginning to fear something themselves. They feared humans. And deep in the hidden corners of the galaxy, enslaved species whispered a new name with reverence and hope. Deathworlders. The galaxy had never seen anything like them. The hunters had ruled the galaxy with terror for centuries. Their name alone was enough to silence rebellions, to break empires, to keep entire civilizations in chains. But now something had changed. Humanity had broken the illusion. They had shown that the monsters of the galaxy were not gods. They were just killers who could bleed and who could be hunted. The hunters could not ignore the humiliation. Their empire stretched across countless stars, and yet every whisper in the void carried the same rumor. The humans fight back. To erase this shame, the hunters gathered their largest armadas. These were fleets forged from the heart of their empire, bristling with weapons powerful enough to destroy entire planets. Thousands of ships moved as one, black as shadows, their purple engines burning like fire across the stars. Their leaders swore an oath. Humanity would be wiped from existence. But humanity was waiting. The humans had grown sharper with every battle. They knew the hunters would come in force. They studied their movements, predicted their tactics, and prepared defenses. What once was a scattered collection of colonies had now become a single united front. Humanity no longer stood alone. They stood as a species bound together by survival. When the hunter armadas finally arrived, they did not find prey trembling in fear. They found predators ready to strike. The first clash came at Vega Prime, a jewel of human expansion. The hunters descended with overwhelming numbers, believing the colony would fall in hours, but as their fleets entered orbit, they found themselves ambushed. Human carriers poured out fighters in tight formations, darting between hunter ships like swarms of angry hornets. Battleships fired in coordinated strikes, tearing holes through the enemy's massive lines. The void erupted in fire, a storm of missiles, plasma bolts, and railgun slugs. The hunters had expected easy slaughter. Instead, they were trapped in a killing ground. Again and again, they tried to break through. They unleashed their heaviest weapons, scorching the skies, breaking human shields, smashing stations into rubble. But every time they pushed forward, human fleets cut their supply lines, encircled their formations, and struck their weak points. It was a new kind of war. Fast, brutal, unpredictable. The hunters grew frustrated. Their commanders shouted for order, for discipline, but their fleets were collapsing. They were not hunting anymore. They were being hunted. The turning point came when humans deployed a new weapon. It was not a supergun, not a doomsday device. It was something simpler. Clever traps. Human engineers had filled whole regions of space with hidden mines disguised as debris. When the hunters retreated through them, entire squadrons vanished in fire. Gravity bombs pulled their ships off course, slamming them into asteroids. Electronic warfare blinded their targeting systems, leaving them helpless as human missiles struck home. For every hunter fleet that tried to strike, 2 more were lost to ambushes. Their arrogance had become their weakness, and humanity exploited it without mercy. The galaxy could hardly believe the reports. Species that had lived in terror for generations now listened with wide eyes. The unstoppable predators, the monsters that once destroyed worlds with ease, were losing. Not only losing, but fleeing. The word spread like wildfire. The hunters, our prey now. And the hunters themselves felt it. For the first time in their history, fear crawled into their cold hearts. They had never been chased, never been cornered. Now, they were the ones running. In one battle above the world of Talmar, a hunter commander sent a desperate message. We are being stalked. The humans do not fight like prey. They fight like wolves. The humans had become relentless. They followed the hunters across systems, hunting down every ship that escaped. Fleets moved like packs surrounding their enemy, striking from every angle. No hunter was safe, not even in their own territory. But humanity was not just fighting for victory. They were fighting for survival, and for a message. Every battle was a signal to the galaxy. We are not weak. We are not prey. We are human. The hunters had once believed their power eternal. But now, with every burning ship, with every lost world, they saw their empire crumbling. They realized the truth too late. They had created their own nightmare. By hunting humanity, they had awakened something unstoppable. The predator had become the prey. And in the shadows of the galaxy, enslaved species rose from silence. They began to resist, inspired by the humans. Small uprisings turned into rebellions. Hidden cells struck at hunter garrisons. Hope, once a forgotten word, began to spread. The hunters tried to crush it, but it was already too late. Humanity had lit a fire that could not be put out. The war was far from over, but its shape had changed forever. The hunters, once feared, above all, were now the ones running from the storm. And that storm had a name. Humanity. Asterisk. The galaxy had changed. Once the hunters had ruled every star with terror. They were shadows in the void, unstoppable predators that no species dared to challenge. But now their fleets burned, their strongholds fell, and everywhere their ships fled, the humans followed. Humanity had turned the impossible into reality. They had broken the chains of fear. The galaxy no longer whispered of the hunters as gods. Instead, it whispered of humans, the prey who refused to bow, the prey who had become the predator. But the war was not finished. The hunters still held their throne world, a fortress at the very heart of their empire. It was a place no enemy had ever reached. A planet wrapped in rings of steel, defended by fleets larger than most nations. To the hunters, it was unbreakable. To humanity, it was the last hunt. The human fleets gathered. From Earth, from Mars, from colonies spread across the stars, ships poured into the void. War-worn vessels, newly built dreadnoughts, swarms of fighters, all came together in a single armada. The largest force humanity had ever assembled. Every ship carried scars, but every crew carried fire in their hearts. They knew what this battle meant. It was not just survival anymore. It was justice. The hunters saw the humans coming. They prepared with all their power. Their fleets stretched across the system, black warships lined in perfect formation. Weapons glowed, ready to unleash death. The hunters had been humiliated, but here, On their throne world, they believed victory was certain. The void went silent as both sides faced each other. Then, with a single order, the final hunt began. The battle exploded like a storm. Human and hunter fleets collided in fire, filling the skies with destruction. Missiles streaked across space, railguns thundered, and plasma blasts turned the black void into oceans of light. The hunters fought with savage fury, determined to defend their throne. But humanity fought with something greater: purpose. Every maneuver was sharp, every strike calculated. Human fleets moved like packs of wolves, cutting through enemy lines. Hunters that had once stalked prey found themselves cornered, surrounded, torn apart. Human marines boarded warships, fighting hand-to-hand until the corridors dripped with victory. The hunters tried to rally, but humanity would not let them breathe. A wave of human carriers unleashed endless fighters that dove into their ranks. Battleships fired coordinated salvos, each one hammering the enemy like the beat of war drums. Entire hunter squadrons shattered under the weight of relentless strikes. Then, the humans brought out their final weapon. Not a supergun, but their will. One by one, human ships that had already been crippled turned themselves into weapons. Dying vessels rammed into hunter command ships, detonating in fiery sacrifice. Crews gave their lives not in fear, but in defiance. Every explosion tore holes in the hunter defenses. Every sacrifice pushed humanity closer to victory. The hunters, who once knew no fear, finally felt it. Their fleets broke, their formations collapsed, and as human dreadnoughts pressed through the chaos, the throne world itself came into sight. The hunters had always believed their fortress was untouchable. But humanity had not come to hesitate. The order was given. Planetary bombardment began. Orbital defenses fell one by one, their towers crumbling in fire. Ring stations shattered like glass. Hunter cities, once filled with arrogance and power, burned beneath the rain of human weapons. For the first time in their history, the hunters were the ones begging for mercy. But humanity gave none. This was not just war. This was justice for every world that had fallen, for every species that had been silenced, for every scream lost in the void. Humanity had carried the weight of the galaxy's pain, and now they returned it with fire. The last hunter fleet tried to escape, but humans hunted them down. Not a single warship fled the system. Not a single commander survived. The galaxy's greatest predators were gone. Silence fell across the stars. When the fires cleared, humanity stood alone in victory. The hunters were no more. Their empire was ash. Their name, once spoken with fear, was now remembered only as a warning. And the galaxy looked to humanity, not with terror, but with awe. For the first time, enslaved species lifted their heads and whispered a new truth. The galaxy had a defender. Humanity had not only survived, humanity had become the shield and the sword. From that day, one law echoed across the stars: never mistake humans for prey. Because when the hunters came for them, humanity became the final hunt.